Hi everyone, welcome back to Novel Nomad and welcome to my Vlogmas Q&A. Now I've been putting out requests for questions on my Instagram. I think I did one on my Twitter, or I did earlier on my YouTube. But yeah, I've just been collecting all these questions that people have been sending me, and yeah, this is my first Q&A, so I hope you enjoy. If you have any further questions, let me know down below. But yeah, let's get straight into it. It's going to be really fun. So the first set of questions are from Bree Hill. I'll link her down below on her Instagram, but she's asked me 8 questions, so let's get straight into it. Number 1 is there an author you love but are hesitant to recommend? I always say there's a place and time for recommendations. Like, I know with certain friends that I can recommend like a romance author, and I know with some that they definitely will not enjoy like sci-fi. So I usually find that when I read books, there's some that I definitely won't recommend for some people, but I always manage to find a few of my friends who like to read the same things. So I've definitely been able to recommend a majority of the books that I've read. I usually don't recommend the ones that I've disliked, so usually that's probably one that I don't recommend that often. Question 2 is, what's the last book you read and found yourself still thinking a while after? And that's going to be Villette. I read that for Victober, and that really hit me. That was just such a really powerful book. I don't know, I mean, it's one that's really divided with readers. You either love it or you hate it, but I think I just managed to catch it in the love stage, and it really emotionally connected with me, and it was really hard to pick up another Victorian read. I think I read like a contemporary novel afterwards just to like even the score a bit, but it took me like a solid week before I could even consider touching another Victorian novel for that reading month. Question 3 is, has there been a 2019 read that took you completely by surprise? And I'd probably have to say Boy Swallows Universe. I read it for part of my Adelaide Writers Week at the start of the year, and I was not expecting, it's a debut novel, but you know when you just don't expect a debut novel to be that level of good, and you don't expect it to have that deep a story and that deep an impact. I mean, I can still readily recommend Boy Swallows Universe. Throughout this entire year, I haven't stopped recommending that book. So I definitely think that one really surprised me straight out the bat. The characters were so intriguing, and they're so uniquely fresh Australian voices. It was just wonderful. Question 4 is, what are your thoughts on DNFing a book, and if you DNF, what motivates you to put down the book? I have DNF'd a few. I usually don't, because sometimes I find with books I care enough to find out what happens, or I feel like there's a penny that needs to drop and I need to just have the satisfaction of having that one moment where I understand what's going on, or the plot point is revealed, and then I can move on. But I have DNF'd a few sci-fi books that we read for the sci-fi book club this year. One of them was, I just could not connect with the character. I mean, the plot was interesting, but it was a very character driven book, and the character was not there. It kind of had this weird little like chapter arc where it would go in like do world building, do you know, a tiny bit of action plot, and then at the end you might get a character, you know, something to do with the character, and it would just cut off. It was very short chapters, and it didn't work. It didn't carry the character interest or the plot interest throughout the book. So I'd say what makes me DNF is when I lose interest. And I lose interest to the point where I get frustrated with the novel. Not frustrated with a character, because sometimes that could be telling how well a character's written, but frustrated with everything that's going on in the book. And I'm so unmotivated to pick it back up again. Because I'm usually reading like 2 or 3 things. If I don't want to pick it back up, that's usually a sign. Question 5 is, go to the nearest shelf and pick up the 3rd and 7th book on it. What are the titles and have you read them? So, should I go left or right? I'm probably closer to this one. So we're doing 3rd and 7th. I'll count from this way. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So book number 7 is I Wish You All the Best by Mason Diva. This is a non-binary teen YA book, and it is stunning. It is so beautiful. I knew it was coming out, but as soon as it came into the bookstore that I work at, I picked it up and I honestly read it that night. I was just so keen to read this book, and it's such a beautiful story. It's not one of those, because I suppose with I really enjoyed Simon versus the Homo sapien agenda, but that's like a big bold statement of a book, where this is just someone who's it's not as bold and it's not as daring, but at the same time it's just so beautiful and quiet, and it's someone just trying to understand who they are without having to do the big, you know, big announcement or the big romantic gesture. And it's just, I just loved it. I think it was so well received, so beautifully timed, and it just brings into the fore so many aspects of the LGBTQ community and how greater acceptance is always needed. And book number 3 was The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. This one's got lots of hype because I think it's a Reese Witherspoon book club selection, but it's about is basically lady spies in World War One, and how that feeds into what a woman is who was a spy in World War One. She's called to find a lost cousin after World War Two from a young American girl who runs away from home in order to find what happened to her cousin during the war in France. So this was really, it's huge, but it's really intensely good, and it just keeps you so addicted because you have the dual narratives, and basically the man who she was hunting down in World War One was the one who had something to do with the disappearance of the girl's cousin in World War Two, and that's why there's that personal vested interest in this case. So this was really, really good fun and a really good historical novel. Okay, so Bree's question 6 is going to be, where do you typically find book recommendations? What's your favourite location to buy books from? Well, now that I work at a bookstore, I usually buy it from there. If I can't get it in, because sometimes the titles are quite obscure or they're not readily available from our distributors, I usually see if there's any independent booksellers online that I can order from as well, in the place where the books are published. So some of the US titles I usually get, so some of the romance books as well I get from the Ripped Bodice in America, because we don't get all of those books available for Australia market. Where do I get most of my book recommendations? Mainly YouTube, that's for sure. Definitely BookTube, definitely Bookstagram, though some of the covers there are so stunning. It's usually Bookstagram stories, weirdly enough. I do love posts. I love looking at how aesthetically beautiful posts are, but stories, when people just chat about a book or they just, oh my god, I love this book, that's usually what gets me like hooked in or a bit interested. And also, of course, Goodreads, I usually do enjoy just skimming a few recommended books. If I've just finished a book, I've been making a point to write reviews all this year. So if I finish a book, I just usually go and see what other people recommended, or what it might be on a list for, or what the algorithm recommends for me. But yeah, usually it's from people I know, BookTube, Instagram, and also Goodreads. Question 7 is, pick a 2019 read that you would love to have adapted as a film, and who would you cast in the leading roles? Ooh, that'd be hard. Okay, so favourite read I've chosen is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, and I'm going to cast the 3 main characters in this. So for Vasya, I'm going to pick Saoirse Ronan. I think she's a fantastic actress, and I think she'll just be able to carry that kind of power, that intensity that Vasya has. I think she'll be able to carry it off really well. For the bear, I thought Javier Bardem. He has kind of like that really cheeky smile, but he also has that kind of that stockier, strong, really strong build that could be really intimidating as the bear. And then of course the Winter King. He's a hard one because you want someone who's willowy, you want someone who's powerful and live. So the only one I could really think of off the top of my head was perhaps Bill Skarsgård. I know he's known for playing Pennywise, but I think he has like those really soulful eyes that could be really powerful as the Winter King, and he could just have that really intense acting, which would be great. Okay, so question 8 is if you could have coffee or tea with any author, who would it be and what would be 3 questions you ask them? Possibly coffee or tea. I would have tea, and I might as well have tea with... It's really hard because you want to know who you want to chat to the most. And so I think I would probably have tea with Mackenzie Lee. She's the writer of A Lady's Guide and A Gentleman's Guide. I think she'll be ridiculously fun. Hopefully she can bring her beautiful St. Bernard Queenie along, and we can all just have a chat about how ridiculous historical characters are and how much fun it would be. I think she also works in a bookstore, so I'll probably say 1, can you please sign my books? 2, what mentality do you get into write Monty because he's fabulous? And 3, when's the next book coming out, because I cannot wait, it looks so good. I think it's late next year, but I'm already ready for it. So the next set of questions are from Sharon from Where the Books Go. I will link all of these lovely people down below. And number 1 is, do you put up your Christmas tree before or after the Christmas pageant? And the Christmas pageant in Adelaide is early November, and because my birthday is late November, we always put it up after the Christmas pageant in December, after my birthday as well. So it usually goes up early December, and it just makes it all wonderful and festive. Next questions are from Kate Howe, and number 1 is, what is the book design pet peeve you have? And 1 is when they have like someone's head like cut off, or you just see someone going like that, or like, I mean, I don't mind the eyes because the eyes can be quite expressive, but as soon as they cut off, like, I know, from the neck down or the mouth down, it's just weird. I'm like, why don't you just include the whole face now? It's like, it's just stupid. So it's, yeah, it's kind of like that kind of design, and also putting on like that clear plastic, like reflective, highly reflective covering over it, so when you actually hold the book up you can't actually see what the book is. So I suppose that's a pet peeve for BookTube, but otherwise, yeah, no, I think cutting people in half, well, you might as well just have the full person on the front cover. Kate Howe's second question is, who is a book character you identify with? This question's also been asked by Goodbye Tuesday on Instagram. So a character that I identify with the most, more recently, I would have to say Lucy Snow in Villette. Not all that kind of intense background that she had, but my dog passed away the same time as I was reading Villette, so I was emotionally distraught at the same time as Lucy was emotionally distraught, so it was very much like a emotional whirlwind reading that book. And I think that's why I feel so much into the love category, because I could really connect with that character. But overall, I think probably I would have to say like a really strong character. Like I can't really say Jane Eyre, because there's elements of Jane that I still have issues with. So I'd have to say recently it would be Lucy Snow, just from that emotional grieving angle, absolutely. So next question is from Ceylan. 1, what is your favourite bookshop? Very hard question. So I work in a fantastically huge bookshop, so I'd probably say locally that's my favourite. I'm probably biased as well, but then little independent ones, I do love imprints, which I did a video on for Vlogmas, me going to imprints, as well as the pop-up bookstore in the Central Markets. Those are 2 that I visit quite frequently. Boston Girl asked me would like some recommendations of books set in Australia by Australian authors. So like I said earlier, you've got Roland Sinclair's mystery series by Sulari Gentile. So that one's fantastic, set in Australia, also set in 1930s, quite historically accurate. You've got Boy Swallows Universe, a fantastic contemporary Australian read, although it is set in the 80s, it kind of moves forward from that. You've got The Dry by Jane Harper, a really good like crime thriller. YA books, you've definitely got, I think there's one coming out in the US soon by Poppy New Soul called Making Friends with Alice Dyson. That is coming out in the US, but it's came out here in Australia and it's so much fun. Also anything by Melina Marchetta. She usually writes some fantastic YA novels. So next one is from Dirty Taco, and that is, what's the worst recommendation someone has given to you? Well, I mean, worst recommendations, I have to actually read the book as well. But I think what I do hate is when you work at a bookstore, people frantically come up to you wanting you to find this book for them, and when you do, they said, oh, it's amazing, have you read it? And when you say, oh, no, I haven't read that one, and they just keep going at you saying, you have to read it, you have to read it, you have to read it. That can get a bit exhausting. The other one also is, I've had someone actually, I was searching up for a book on the computer for someone who was standing next to me, and this guy kind of walked up to me and just like held a book up in my face, like right in front of the computer screen, and he's like, it's great, you have to read it. And like, some of these are so obscure and they're not really in the genre, but it's just funny that people just get so passionate about books that they physically like shove them into your face wanting you to read it. So that's probably the worst book recommendations I've ever had, is when people just adamantly try to make you read something, or at least try to make you want to read something. It kind of sends in the other direction. But yeah, so not too many that I'm usually pretty good at filtering out the ones that I'm probably not interested in. And we have Kate from my Femmes Book Club. She's like, what is your favourite book for summer, autumn, winter and spring? Obviously separate books for separate seasons. I'd say summer. I usually like to read well, crime, what I'm reading at the moment, and romance. So I've just really enjoyed like romantic crime, a bit like cozy crime as well. So we've got the Daisy Dalrymple ones, which I thoroughly adore. I'm trying to slowly get through the series. There's quite a number of books. And I also like reading other romance. So where's there one at hand? So this one as well, Eidolon. This is like a fantasy romance. They're usually quite fun as well during summer, just because it's so hot and you just want to read something a bit like a getaway. I say with spring, I usually like to start settling into reading more literary novels. So it would just be something, usually, because I usually read Adelaide Writers Week novels every year, and they're quite literary in their content as well. Winter is always going to be, I usually have like a solid like week of like cozy reads alongside some really interesting sci-fi fantasy. So I've recently loved like the YA Six of Crows is a fantastic wintry read, and also I like binged this one. It was like late spring, early autumn, the side. Oh, and my autumn reads, sorry, I forgot my autumn reads. Autumn reads would probably be sci-fi fantasy again, and going more into just general fiction as well. So I kind of rotate through, but definitely in winter and summer I go through like a cozy need. I need some romance or cozy crime or something really sweet and lovely. Grace Victoria on Instagram, she asked me, number one is, what are you going to read over Christmas? And that's going to be finishing off the books from my Cloak and Dagger readathon. Check out my video yesterday for that. And also I think I'm probably going to be looking into reading some John Boyne books, because he's going to be at Adelaide Writers Week, so I'm going to get onto some of his kids fiction for that. Question number two is, what would you normally go for? I'm an emotional reader, so I would have to go with however I'm feeling, what I'm feeling like reading. A Path Well Read asked me 3 questions, and that is, what books are you giving to friends and family this year? And hopefully they're not watching, but I'm giving very craftily curated gifts. My mum is getting a fashion book about Australian fashion designers, mainly because she is a seamstress and she loves to create and make clothing, so that's going to be very much in her field. My dad just recently got into baking and trying to craft the perfect sourdough loaf, so I got him Super Sourdough, which explains all the science behind sourdough. And my brother is getting a science book. He's very much into maths now. He's gone back to university and he's studying maths. So he's getting like the best 17 equations that change the world. And my friend Chloe is going to be getting a lovely nature-based book. I can't say anything because I know you'll be watching, Chloe. Next from a Path Well Read is what books or bookish accessories are on your this year's wish list. I always love totes. But recently I've been going for more bookmarks. I suppose I've got lots of bookish accessories. I've kind of gone more into plants as well for like accessorizing, or pots as well. I think I've got a few of these little Study adorable little pots. This is a Harry Potter one. This is a little, she calls them bebes or babies, but this is a little Harry Potter shelf. He's supposed to like be a little planter or a little holder of something, so I'm not sure what I'm going to use him for yet, but he's been very cutely adorning my bookshelf. But yeah, otherwise mainly bookmarks. I really love a really beautiful bookmark. And then lastly from a Path Well Read is go to guilty pleasure Christmas read or movie. Christmas read is always going to be the remaking of Corbin Whale by Rowan Parrish. I'm trying to get the book out now. This one here, it's actually a Hanukkah festive story, so that one's really good. Christmas movie, I usually watch like a Harry Potter, I think. Usually like Harry Potter Part 7, Part 1, sorry. Harry Potter 7 Part 1. It's one of my favourites, I think, because there's a lot of character building and you get a lot of backstory in that one, which is great. That, or I want to watch Lord of the Rings. It might be a Lord of the Rings marathon for me this Christmas. Goodbye Tuesday from Instagram, she also asked me, what was your favourite childhood book? I read Animal Ark Like Anything. Del Toro Quest by Emily Rodda is amazing. If your kids are interested in sci-fi, or more fantasy actually, if your kids are interested in fantasy and they're in the age range of like 6, 7, this is a fantastic series. So Del Toro Quest, there's 3 like separate series in the whole like world, and Emily Rodda's written so many other things, but that one is particularly fantastic. A great hero quest story. And then I have like a few picture books. I loved Wind in the Willows. I loved The Hobbit when I was younger. Yeah, I have like this really cute picture book about a little bunny rabbit having a birthday party. That was always really sweet. But I think once I got into the older teen, I started getting into like Garth Nix, Tamora Pierce. I went heavily into fantasy. Question 2 from Goodbye Tuesday is, how do you celebrate Christmas in Australia? And it is a hot Christmas in Australia, so typically it starts up by you wake up, you open up all your presents as usual, they're all under the tree, everyone's still in their really short pyjamas and t-shirts because it might be hot, and usually I think if I was having a big Christmas with all my extended family, there would be like cold cuts of ham, you'd have seafood, a lot of seafood, you would have lots of stone fruit because that would be out. Especially in Adelaide, we're really lucky, we have quite a large stone fruit producing area. And then of course you have, but for us this year we're doing a Spanish vegetarian paella with spiced whitefish skewers, so we're doing something quite different. I think that's also something quite fun in Australia. You just like to dabble with the classic Christmas feast. And of course we're going to have a pavlova. If you haven't had a pavlova before, it is delicious, but I maintain that you have to have a crunchy pavlova shell and not the soft gooey marshmallowy one. So pavlova with cream and fresh fruit is stunning, and we do have Christmas cake, there's chocolates, there's all yummy things, and then of course after you eat all the food at lunchtime you just veg. We do play a lot of board games too, like that's like the post feast digestion period before you have to go lay down and like sweat it out. But then in the evening I would probably go for a walk along the beach as well. And lastly from TJ on Instagram, she asked me, what's the best way to read when you're not really a kind of bookish reading person? And it's just picking something that you're really interested in all honesty. Like you can't just make yourself read like a 500-page novel because everyone's recommending it. You have to find something that you're really, really want to find out more information about and you're really passionate about. And just set aside some time. So if you catch the public transport, read on the bus or the train or something. Or if you have a few moments in the morning, or if you just find any time to yourself or any time to relax, just pick up that book that you're really, really interested in. So that's what I say. Just hunt around until you find a topic that really interests you. And it's a book that gets good recommendations as well, because it can go either way. Alright, well thank you so much for joining me for my first Q&A. If you have any further questions that you would like answered, potentially in a future Q&A, let me know down below. And I'll see you all tomorrow for the very last day of Vlogmas. Bye!